Okay, so hello guys. My name is Emily Hicks, and this is my teacher toolkit. My teacher toolkit is important because it is how I will be able to refer to anything in my teaching career that I will need help with. And in this teacher toolkit, I will explain 6 tools in which I will include in here. My first tool is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is how much one knows about their emotions and a little bit on how to control them. Its usefulness for teachers, like as for teachers to understand, is teachers are able to better understand students when they recognize different emotional intelligences and whatnot, and even themselves when they're struggling. It is helpful as a teacher in the future to know emotional intelligence because, like I said, it can help a teacher know more about a student and their emotional needs. And then to use it in a lesson plan, I could teach emotional intelligence in a lesson plan to any student of any age and any grade on how emotional intelligence affects them, what emotional intelligence is, and whatnot. Now, how would I teach this? I would teach emotional intelligence through just kind of like a class activity, like almost like a seminar, but not. I would have students first try to explain like what they know about emotional intelligence, if they know what it is, and then I would explain my definition of emotional intelligence, and if they can, and have students identify what kinds of emotional intelligence there is and how it can affect a student. My second tool is the idea of imaginary audience. Imaginary audience or imaginary audiences is how one feels, especially as adolescents. We often feel that there is someone or like people judging us, even though in reality no one is judging us. We're just being us. Everyone's living in their own world, and it's helpful for teachers to know that, to know why students act in a certain way and just explain student behavior. Now, how will it influence my teaching practices? The more I know about imaginary audiences and how it can affect students, it will affect my teaching practices by having me try to understand why students act a certain way or why they are more shy or more outgoing or maybe even more aggressive towards others. Now, how would I teach this? I would teach this by first just kind of explaining the feelings behind imaginary audiences, like things such as anxiety or aggression and whatnot, and see if students have ever felt any of that or kind of been in a similar situation, and then explain what imaginary audiences is and how it affects students, and then have students just kind of talk about it and chat about it. Now, for my third tool is self esteem. Self esteem is how one thinks of themselves emotionally, physically, just overall. It's helpful for a teacher to know about self esteem because it is also another contributor in how students act and behave. So, like if a student has low self esteem, they might act more negative towards society versus a student who has high self esteem that might act more positive towards society. How will knowing self esteem, influence my teaching practices? So, knowing self esteem and how it affects students will influence my teaching practices by having me be able to try and be there and supportive as my students as much as possible, especially if they have low self esteem, try and help them build that self esteem up so they believe they can do whatever they want to do. How would I teach this? I would teach this by maybe having like my students get into groups and talk about what they believe their self-esteem is, if they think highly of themselves or low of themselves, if they're comfortable sharing that, even or just writing it on a piece of paper or at a class, and then just kind of identifying the types of self-esteem and what we can do to help people who have low self-esteem. Now, my fourth tool is emotion regulation. So, emotion regulation is how one regulates their emotions and how one is able to control their emotions. Its usefulness in teaching is basically teachers will be able to understand how students react when facing certain things and certain emotions, such as frustration, anger, anxiety, and whatnot. How will I use the incorporate emotional regulation or social emotional learning in my classroom? I will incorporate it into creating a fostering and nurturing environment in my classroom between teacher and student relations, student or peer to peer relations, and parent to student or admin to teacher to student, anything like that. Try and foster proper emotion regulations and just try to be positive overall. And how will I teach this to students? I will teach them emotion regulation by, especially since I want to teach younger kids, I will first show how I regulate my emotions and then have them try and observe and kind of mock those so they know what to do. Now, for my fifth tool is behaviorism or the theory of behaviorism. So, the theory of behaviorism is from the theorist B.F. Skinner, and it has to do with two types of conditioning, which is operant and classical conditioning, and they incorporate different positive and negative types of punishment and reinforcement to affect behavior or affect the outcome of a behavior. The connection of the past article I had, so this article, to just behaviorism overall. It kind of explains like what different reinforcements and different punishments will do and whatnot, such as if I were to tell my students, hey, I'll give y'all extra breaks or a snack if you complete this assignment, that's a positive reinforcement to keep working in an incentive to get a snack or a break. Now, for CASTLE, which is an advanced social and emotional learning, I can use this in the classroom. I can use this in the classroom when, or I can use um, behaviorism in the classroom to help insensitize my students. So yeah, I apologize. For Castle is a good developmental resource for me to go back on and reflect on it whenever I'm having any troubles with the social and emotional learning and aspects of it with my students. Um, Basically, if I can't use what I already know, or I can't get the help from my coworkers or anything, or my fellow teachers, or even other students, I can always rely back on Castle to help me get new ideas to foster social and emotional learning. Now, when would I turn to Castle for guidance? Like I said, I would turn to Castle for guidance when I need just extra help with the social and emotional learning and whatnot. And yeah, just fostering that. Now, time to reflect. How have I changed as a teacher this year throughout this course and what I have learned? Personally, I believe I have changed as a soon to be teacher by knowing obviously more factual and theory based evidences for teaching and how children just learn and behave and develop and grow. But also I've learned more from a teacher's perspective and how to look through a teacher's perspective versus a non-teacher's perspective. Now, why do I teach? I teach because I want to inspire children and I want my students to learn and to know that they can accomplish whatever they want. And as long as they put their mind to it, and that one thing does not define them, I want my students to know that they always have someone by their side and they are always able to do whatever they want as long as they put their mind to it. And I just want to inspire them. So that is why I teach.